Hello and welcome to the second episode of Thriller Fiction Thursdays with me, the author Michael Campling, and I'm going to be reading today the second instalment of Lawful Duty, a Devonshire crime thriller, book by me, OBS. And this is a spin-off series from the Devonshire Mysteries. It goes back in time to the 90s, and we find a policeman who's quite a jaded detective, sort of heading for retirement in the Devonshire Mysteries, and we go back to meet him back in the 90s when he's a freshly minted detective. So, if you've missed the first episode, wherever you're watching this, you should be able, or listening to it, you should be able to find it. And I say watching or listening because this is a video on Substack. It is also a video on YouTube, and it is a podcast on YouTube and anywhere else that podcasts are available. If in doubt, the definitive place to get things is authormichaelcampling.substack.com, and you will find it there. It'll be, say, in the menu, Thriller Fiction Thursdays. Okay, without further ado, I'll go on. I am recording this today. It's not live, but because I want to get ahead this week for reasons. But however, it will be recorded as live, which means if I make a mistake, and I will be just having another run at it and going again. This is like as near to live as I can get it, as near to me reading a story as I can manage. Just arrange everything here so we can get at it. Try not to wave the cover too much in front of the camera, which can happen, as I discovered yesterday. Okay, so Lawful Duty by Michael Campling. Last time we had the prologue, in which we met a young woman called Lindsay. And today, pardon me, we get into the story proper. Monday. Chapter 1, 1992. Timothy Spiller guided his Volvo 340 into a parking space and switched off the car radio. They'd been playing It's Probably Me by Sting, the theme tune to the latest Lethal Weapon film, and Spiller smiled to himself. Life in the police just wasn't like that. He climbed from the car and shut the door with a gratifying clunk. That was Swedish engineering for you. Solid. Reliable. He hadn't quite got used to the car yet, but he was enjoying every minute behind the wheel. The Volvo might have a fair few miles on the clock, but compared to his old Datsun Cherry, it was a dream to drive. With his fingertips, Spiller brushed a streak of dirt from the dark blue bodywork. Then he headed across the car park. That was daft, he told himself. His first day in a new job, and he'd have to shake hands with his colleagues. But here he was with muck on his hand. He pulled a handkerchief from his pocket and wiped his fingers. You only had one chance to create a first impression, and he intended to make it a good one. Pocketing his handkerchief as he went along, Spiller gazed up at the utilitarian building of brick and glass. Heavytree Police Station. His new place of work. His heart beating a little faster, Spiller strode up the steps and let himself in through the glass door. He was here. At last, he'd made it. The uniformed sergeant behind the counter had the look of a seasoned officer, his years on the beat etched in the lines on his brow. Not a hair on his grizzled head was out of place, and his white shirt could have been used to advertise Purcell. He regarded Spiller with a raised eyebrow and an indifferent smile. "Yes, sir, how can I help you?" Spiller stood tall. "Good morning, Sergeant. I'm Tim Spiller. I'm the new detective constable. It's my first day." "Ah." The sergeant plucked a clipboard from beneath the counter and studied it, tapping a plastic biro against the page as he read. Brightening, he offered a smile and a nod. "Right you are, Tim. Welcome to Heavytree. I'm Colin Goodwin, but call me Skip. Everyone does." He offered his hand for a shake and Spiller took it. "Thanks. Nice to meet you, Skip." "Listen, Tim, they're expecting you upstairs today, but..." He glanced at his watch. "It's barely 8 o'clock, so there's hardly anyone in CID. DCS Boyce is in. He always starts early, but I don't think you want to disturb the detective chief superintendent on your first day." "Oh." Spiller tried not to let his disappointment show. Never mind, I'll wait. I expect everyone else will be here in a minute. Maybe, Goodwin replied without much conviction. He regarded Spiller for a moment, and his expression softened. On the other hand, it's quiet at the minute, and I expect DCS Boyce will be ensconced in his office, so I suppose I could take you up and show you around. Well, if it's not too much trouble, but don't you have to cover the desk? Skip waved Spiller's question aside. My shift's almost over. Phil will be here in a minute. I'll leave him a note. OK, I'm ready when you are. Spiller put his hands in his pockets in a show of nonchalance, but he had to stop himself from bouncing on the balls of his feet. At last, Goodwin emerged from a side door and indicated a stairway at one end of the lobby. It's this way. Yes, I've been here before for my interview. Of course you have. Must have been a while. Oh, sorry. Of course you have. It must have been while I wasn't on duty. I'll never forget a face. Spiller didn't doubt Goodwin's claim. He knew a dyed-in-the-wool copper when he saw one, and as he followed Goodwin up the stairs, he said, Have you been here long? Oh, yes, donkey's years. I bet you could tell some tales, Spiller said. Goodwin halted and turned to face him, his eyebrows lowered. What do you mean by that? Nothing really, but when you've been at a nick for a while, you get to know who's who, both in here and out there. I expect you've seen a few familiar faces in the cells over the years, haven't you? Goodwin nodded slowly. Then he resumed his journey up the stairs in silence. Oh dear, Spiller thought, I've touched a nerve there. Perhaps Goodwin had previously been accused of gossiping or telling tales out of school. A desk sergeant saw almost everything that went on in a station, and the job came with a great deal of responsibility. One thing was for sure, Spiller did not want to be on Sergeant Goodwin's wrong side. One way or another, he'd have to make amends. But perhaps Goodwin wasn't the type to take umbrage for long. By the time they reached the second floor, his businesslike demeanour was back. This is your new home from home, Goodwin said, opening an unmarked door and striding inside. Spiller followed, gazing around the CID office in awe. The last time he'd seen it, the place had been a hive of activity, but with the desks unoccupied, the room seemed enormous. Ah, Goodwin said. Sorry, sir, I didn't see you for a second. With a start, Spiller spotted a smartly dressed man in the corner of the room and recognised him immediately. This was Detective Chief Superintendent Mark Boyce, the man who'd interviewed Spiller before That's a mouthful. This was Detective Chief Superintendent Mark Boyce, the man who'd interviewed Spiller before accepting him into CID. In a pale blue shirt and dark blue tie, Boyce looked immaculate, his hair neatly combed and his charcoal grey trousers neatly pressed. He was filling the kettle at the sink, and he kept his attention on the task as if judging the correct amount of water to the nearest millilitre. Apparently satisfied, he set the kettle down carefully and switched it on. Then he ran his gaze over Spiller, his eyes bright. This is your new DC, sir, Goodwin went on. Tim Spiller. Spiller stood to attention. Reporting for duty, sir. Boyce smiled. Ah, Timothy, good to see you again. And you've arrived bright and early. Excellent. I'll be with you in a moment. Yes, sir. Thank you, sir. Goodwin leaned a little closer to Spiller. Oh, goodness me. Once you start to go wrong, it keeps going wrong. Goodwin leaned a little closer to Spiller and lowered his voice. Call him Super. He prefers it. Spiller nodded. Right, I'll leave you to it, Goodwin muttered. He nodded to Boyce and raised his voice to add, See you tomorrow, sir. Yes, thank you, Sergeant. Boyce consulted his watch, and Goodwin took this as his cue to leave. Spiller stood awkwardly, but Boyce beckoned him over. Tea? Boyce asked. Milk and sugar, that's right, isn't it? Yes, sir, but I can make my own cup of tea. Spiller made his way over to join his new boss, who was already bending to hunt through a cupboard in search of a clean mug. Success, Boyce said, straightening his back and brandishing a mug. I'll do the honours on this occasion, but I don't make a habit of brewing up for the whole of CID. No, sir, of course not, sir. I'm sure you're far too busy for that. Boyce made a non-committal noise, and Spiller sensed he'd said the wrong thing. In the silence, the kettle clicked off, its job done. It's not that I've too much on my plate, Boyce went on as he made the drinks. I have plenty to do, but I'm not one of those officers who sit in an ivory tower. I like a tea break as much as the next man, so you'll see me out here grabbing a drink the same as everyone else. But I have a routine. That's the secret to this job, Tim. Routine. Make a plan and stick to it. No matter how many tasks land on your desk, you can only tackle them one at a time. Bit by bit, we get the job done. Boyce consulted his watch and then removed the tea bags from the mugs, adding the milk and sugar quickly, his movements deft and precise. That done, he handed Spiller a mug and waited expectantly. Thank you, sir. Spiller took a cautious sip. That's very nice, sir. Hits the spot. The trick is to time the brew. Too long and it's stewed, too short and it's barely tea at all. He paused, studying Spiller thoughtfully. Why didn't you listen to Sergeant Goodwin? Spiller had a mouthful of tea and almost choked on it. Sorry, sir? I heard what he said. There's nothing wrong with my hearing. He advised you to call me Super, knowing full well that I hate it, but you ignored him. Why? Were you simply being cautious? No, sir. Spiller composed himself. I noticed he didn't follow his own advice. He always referred to you as sir, so I guessed he might be having a bit of fun at my expense. Boyce laughed. By God, Tim, you're sharp as a tack. I'll give you that. We'll make a detective out of you yet. Yes, sir, that's what I'm here for. Good man. They sipped their drinks in silence for a while, Spiller's gaze roaming the room, while Boyce stared into the middle distance, his mind elsewhere. The door opened, and both men breathed easier as a besuited man strode into the room. The new arrival greeted Boyce, then acknowledged Spiller with a nod. You must be my new DC, Tim Spiller, am I right? Yes, sir. Tim was here early, raring to go, Boyce said. To Spiller, he added, This is Detective Superintendent John Chisholm. He'll set you on the straight and narrow. You'll be seeing more of him than you will of me, although... Boyce looked from Chisholm to Spiller. I'll be keeping an eye on you, Tim. I'm not going to hold your hand. If you need that, you're in the wrong job. But I can see your potential, and I'll be having a chat with you now and then, just to see how you're doing. Thank you, sir. I appreciate that. Boyce nodded. Gentlemen, I'll leave you to it. He took a sip of his tea and then marched across the room, disappearing into a corner office and closing the door firmly. Chisholm strolled over to his own large desk at the far end of the room. Then he shrugged out of his jacket, hanging it on the back of his chair. First things first, Tim, Chisholm said. Milk and two and leave the bag in. I can't stand weak tea in the mornings. He sat down and frowned at Spiller. When you're ready, in your own time. Sorry, sir, I'll get right on it. As quickly as he could, Spiller made a mug of tea. He kept a keen eye on Boyce earlier, so he found everything he needed without difficulty. But when he splashed milk on the counter, he searched in vain for something to mop it up. Leave it, Chisholm called out. You can get a paper towel from the loo later. Bring my tea over, will you? I've got a tongue like the bottom of a budgie's cage. Mumbling an apology, Spiller hurried over to Chisholm's desk, a mug in each hand. As he waited, Spiller felt the colour rising to his cheeks, but Chisholm didn't seem to notice. He was too busy rifling through the stacks of cardboard folders cluttering his desk. Pull up a pew, Chisholm said. Anyone will do, but that purple one is good. Spiller hesitated. The only purple chair in the office was noticeably newer and smarter than the others, its upholstery pristine. Go on, Chisholm went on. I haven't got all day. Setting down the mugs, Spiller grabbed the chair and sat beside Chisholm, leaning forward, ready to absorb the gems of information that was surely about to come his way. Tar! Chisholm grabbed a mug and took a gulp. Not bad, Tim, but let's crack on. This is my desk, and it's where I'm to be found. If you need anything, come and ask. I could have an office of my own, but I politely declined. I want to be here where I can see what's going on, and I won't stand for any monkeying about. Save that for the pub after work. You are coming out for a drink tonight, aren't you? First day and all that? Thank you, sir, but... Gov, Chisholm interrupted. Call me Gov or Governor. I'm not fussy. DCS Boyce... it's really hard to say his name. Call me Gov or Governor. I'm not fussy. DCS Boyce likes to be a bit more formal, but that's his prerogative. Out here, we're all in the trenches together. But you're not trying to wriggle out of a night in the pub, are you? Spiller adjusted his position on the chair. I appreciate the invitation, but my wife's expecting me home for dinner. It's your loss, but don't make a habit of turning us down. I want to see you fitting in, Tim. It's good to chew the fat, especially after a crappy day, and there are plenty of those. But let's not dwell on that. Where are you from, Tim? At Telford, Gov. Ah, I thought you were from somewhere up there. You sound like a Brummie. It's not far from Birmingham. I know, Tim, I know. You were in uniform up there, yes? That's right, Gov, but CID is always where I wanted to be. Not a university lad, then? Spiller shook his head. My parents wanted me to go to college. I tried business studies. They run a shop, you see, and I don't need your whole life story. You're here, and that's good enough for me. Welcome to CID. Thanks, Gov. I'll do my best to hit the ground running. You're damned right you will. Chisholm clapped his hands together. Moving on. Let's get your induction over with. First, health and safety. In the event of a fire, I advise you to leave the building. You'll know there's a fire on account of all the smoke and flames and such, but what you won't hear is the ringing of bells. The smoke detectors in here don't work for some reason, which is just as well, as some of us like to have a fag now and then without sloping off to the outside world. Do you smoke, Tim? Spiller shook his head firmly. Just as well. Boyce does not approve. Me neither, Spiller said. But the smoke alarm, if it's broken, isn't that dangerous? Chisholm interrupted. Maybe, but if you want a safe job, go and work in a... Chisholm waved a hand in the air. Forget that. Nowhere's safe these days. We went out to a stabbing last year. The victim was a lecturer, teacher training, knifed by a disgruntled student. Chisholm puffed out his cheeks and exhaled. Makes you wonder, doesn't it? What chance have the kids got when the only people who might actually want to be teachers are unhinged? Before Spiller could reply, the door opened and a group of 3 men walked in, chatting. Spying Spiller, they exchanged fleeting glances with each other before greeting Chisholm. Gather round, lads, Chisholm called out, and the trio assembled around Chisholm's desk. Lads, this is our new DC, Tim Spiller. Gesturing to each of the new arrivals in turn, Chisholm said, in no particular order, DC Adrian Cove, DI Oliver Nicholson, and DS Patrick Riley. A merry band known to all as Aid, Ollie and Paddy. We're missing DC Jenny Hoggerty, who's on holiday, if you can imagine such a thing. Chisholm spread his arms wide. I mean, who'd want to miss all this? Spiller joined in the brief chorus of hollow laughter. We're a small team and a tad top-heavy, Chisholm went on. DCS Boyce is doing his best to get us some more manpower or person power, or whatever you want to call it, but government cuts being what they are, we'll all have to pitch in and make the best of it. Looking to Spiller, he added, all clear? Yes, Gov, Spiller replied. Good to meet you all. Is Detective Chief Inspector Wendell not in today? A murmur ran around the group. Brian will not be gracing us with his presence today, D.S. Riley said. The DCI has been unavoidably detained. Given Riley's name, Spiller had expected an Irish accent, so he was surprised to hear the flat northern vowels of a Yorkshireman. A good few years older than Spiller and sporting a thick moustache, Riley had a hangdog expression and a relaxed posture that somehow made his suit seem scruffy. But he had a friendly twinkle in his eye and Spiller warmed to the man. Standing next to Riley, D.I. Nicholson had the look of a harassed middle manager. Clean-shaven, his cheeks pale and slightly saggy, he wore a V-necked pullover beneath his jacket. Glancing nervously at the others, Nicholson said, The DCI has been suspended pending the investigation of an allegation. A bullshit allegation, Chisholm snapped. He's been made a scapegoat, pure and simple. It's total madness, is what it is. And it leaves us short-handed. That means you'll have to get stuck in, Tim. In at the deep end, sink or swim. Spiller nodded. That's fine by me. This seemed to entertain the others, and the mood... This seemed to entertain the others, and the mood in the room lightened. The only one who hadn't spoken so far, DC Adrian Cove stepped closer to Spiller, his arm outstretched for a shake. Welcome aboard, Tim. I reckon you'll fit right in. Thanks. Spiller guessed that he and DC Cove were about the same age, although Cove's moustache was even fuller than Riley's, and it made him look older. Maybe I ought to grow a moustache, Spiller thought, but he tried before and he couldn't quite carry it off. Unlike Cove, whose thick dark hair had only been restrained with the aid of hair gel, Spiller kept his mousy hair short, and his one and only attempt at growing a beard had ended in a sparse and unconvincing affair. Right then, Chisholm made a shooing motion with his hands. That's enough standing around, ladies. Let's get to work. Morning briefing in. He glanced at the clock on the wall. 20 minutes. You've got time to grab a drink, and Tim here is a dab hand at hot beverages, aren't you, Tim? Spiller opened his mouth to reply, but the others talked over him. Cheers, Tim. Black coffee, no sugar. Tea, 1 sugar. Same for me. The three made for their desks, but Nicholson stopped short. Hey, who the bloody hell's nicked my chair? Wheeling around, Nicholson clapped his eyes on Spiller. That's my chair, son, and not to be taken. Spiller almost fell over his feet in his rush to stand up. Sorry, sir, I didn't know. I had to fight tooth and nail to get that chair, Nicholson said. It's ergonomic. I need it for my back. Right. Spiller pushed the chair toward Nicholson. Apologies, sir. It won't happen again. Spiller risked a sideways glance at Chisholm, but the man was all innocence, shaking his head as if amazed at Spiller's nerve. See that it doesn't. Nicholson took the chair and wheeled it to his desk in silence. OK, Tim, Chisholm said. Take the desk facing Aid, make yourself at home, and see if you can coax that old computer into life. If you look carefully, you'll find a hole for a key. Wind the clockwork up tight, and you should get an hour out of it before the spring runs down. Spiller managed to chuckle. Please don't laugh at the governor's jokes, Adrian Cove called from across the room. It only encourages him. Don't you listen, Tim, Chisholm said. You laugh as loud as you like. OK, what else do you need to know? The loo is down the corridor, the stationery is in that cupboard in the corner, and that concludes your induction. Now, you've just got enough time to make those drinks before the briefing, so I'd get my skates on if I were you. Chisholm went back to sifting through his papers, and Spiller knew what he had to do. Plastering a smile on his features, he pulled himself up to his full height, and with as much dignity as he could muster, he headed for the kettle. Phew, that's the end of chapter 1. A few slip-ups there, sorry about that, but, I do my best. Also, just reading cold like this, it's quite hard to remember to get the correct voices and go through it, because I'm not producing an audio book here. This is a reading, and it's in all its glory and its authenticity and mess and of doing it live. So, hope you enjoyed it. I remember just in time about Paddy Riley having a Yorkshire accent and managed to just get that in because it's been out a little while. The next book in the series is longer, grittier, edgier, but it takes Spiller a little bit further into his career. But this one, yeah, okay, you might say, well, that's not very thrilling to start with for a Thriller Thursday, but you've got to remember the prologue, and we got a bit of tension built up there about what's happened to poor old Lindsay, if anything. So we've got to get all those characters in. You've got to introduce your police crew and get them in. And yeah, you're probably not here for a discussion of it, but there's sort of various metaphors in there over the making of the tea and the old kind of the making fun of a new person, which, happens a lot in workplaces. So you get an idea from the tone. I wish I'd sort of managed to nail Chisholm's accent a bit better. In my mind, it sounds different to how it came out. But, it is what it is, as the young people say. And we managed to get through a whole chapter. So, hope you found that was fun. Further action ensues as we go on. And we find out the case that Spiller will be involved in and all its various ramifications through the rest of the book. So, if you're interested in reading along or looking for it, the paperback should be widely available. The ebook should be available from your public library via things like Hoopla and Overdrive and that kind of service. You may have to ask for it, but once your library has obtained it for you in ebook form, it'll be free for you, of course, and lots of other readers can borrow it. And, if you're thinking, well, do I get paid? Yes, I get a little bit each time somebody checks it out, usually. It depends on the library service, but I get a little bit, of reward from that. So good for me, good for you, good for public libraries. And also on Amazon is the other place. And it is in Kindle Unlimited, which means, of course, you can read it for free if you have that scheme. And a British police, I should say British police, because of course Scotland have a totally different system, which I don't know enough about. Though I do love a bit of the Scottish crime. I like quite a lot of regional crime. I read a lot of crime. I enjoy it. I'm a big fan of Ian Rankin and so on. Okay, Lawful Duty, Devonshire crime thriller, second book out. Sometime spring 2026, hopefully. I do have a title in mind, but I'm not going to say it yet. It's kind of a bit too early to say, but it will be there. So I'm working on the second draft of that. And it's got to that point where I'm racing towards the end now. I'm on chapter sort of 50-something, 56 out of 70-something on my second draft. So I'm racing through it. But, subscribe, like, share, tell people about it, have a listen. All that stuff is good. If you can share stuff with people who might enjoy it, I'd really appreciate it. It helps support the channel and it helps support me as a writer in producing new books. Plus, it's just the support and encouragement. It's great to know that there are people out there who might enjoy my work. And I really appreciate it. Really appreciate all my subscribers and everybody. There is an author newsletter. Easy way to get hold of that is michaelcampling.com/free books. And then you get a number of free books when you sign up, and some audio stories as well. There's a whole bunch of stuff and artwork and all kinds of things. That is my main author newsletter. These podcasts are wherever you found them. So if you're watching on YouTube, that's a good place to follow. But you could also subscribe in a podcast app and you can find the whole bunch. If you want to see all the other themes that happen during the week, then authormichaelcampling.substack.com is a good place to go, because you will see there is Mystery Fiction Mondays, Time Travel Fiction Tuesdays, Thriller Fiction Thursdays, and Sci-Fi Fridays. So quite a lot of readings and videos and so on to do, to pack in. And I hope you find something you enjoy. And if you go to Substack, you can actually subscribe to any or all of those individually. So say you just like the police thriller I'm doing, or you just like mysteries, you can do that. So in the Devonshire mysteries, in the Mystery Mondays, I'm reading the first Devonshire mystery, which is kind of a cozy crime / cozy mystery story set in modern day Devon. In the time travel one, I'm doing Trespass, which is my tale of time travel and ancient secrets. And on the science fiction one, I'm doing Dial G for Gravity, which is a science fiction comedy. So lots of gags, lots of laughs. Thank you very much for listening, watching, liking, subscribing, all those wonderful things. There's lots of places where you can comment. I'll try to keep up with it if people comment, but it's always nice to hear from you. Okay, take care, happy reading, look after yourselves, and bye for now.